It was a brisk, lonely morning when I found myself holding that plastic rose in my hands. My husband, my partner for 35 years, had given his mistress a brand new luxury car, while I, his wife, got this cheap, tacky imitation from a store down the street. For Mother's Day, of all days. I looked at that flower, its fake petals glistening under the sunlight, and realized something. I'd spent my whole life giving, sacrificing and loving, and yet, I was treated like nothing more than an afterthought. My name is Eleanor, and I've seen a lot in my 74 years. I've loved deeply, suffered greatly, and learned to carry my burdens with grace, or so I thought. I've built a life full of love, sacrifice, and memories that should have held more value. But somehow, over the years, it felt like I was disappearing from my own story. As a wife, as a mother, as a grandmother, I gave everything. And in return, I was ignored. It's hard to explain how it feels when the people you love, the people you've given everything for, stop seeing you. I had spent my youth raising my son, Michael. I gave him everything. I never missed a school event. I never hesitated to take on extra hours at work when he needed something. I made sure that he and his wife Amanda had everything they wanted. The house they lived in, the vacations, the gifts. I thought I was doing what any loving mother and grandmother would do. But over time, things started to change. I started to notice that Michael and Amanda were becoming more distant. They stopped inviting me to their family gatherings. There were always excuses. Oh, it's a family-only event, or we're just keeping it small this year. And yet, their friends were always welcome. I began to wonder if something was wrong, but I brushed it off. After all, family was everything, right? Then came the Mother's Day surprise. Or I should say, the complete lack of surprise. My son had always made a big deal about Mother's Day, even as an adult. But this year felt different. I had spent the whole week preparing. I baked a cake for them, cleaned their house when Amanda was sick, and even bought a lovely card for Michael to sign. I thought, this is it, the moment when everything feels right again. I thought they would finally see me, acknowledge me for all I'd done. When the day arrived, I put on my best dress, the one Michael used to compliment every time I wore it. I even pinned a little flower to my hair. I thought, this year they'll see how much I've given. But when I walked through their door, the first thing I noticed wasn't their welcoming smiles. It was Amanda, standing by the door, holding a gift in her hands, a brand new set of keys. Michael stood behind her, smiling proudly. "Mom," he said with an uncharacteristic enthusiasm, "I hope you understand why we couldn't celebrate with you this year. But we thought we'd still get you something special." I stared at the set of keys in Amanda's hands. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That's for the new car I bought Amanda," Michael said, his tone too casual. "A luxury car. A gift for his mistress." I tried to hide my shock, but I couldn't. My heart sank to the floor. "Oh," was all I could say. But as I turned away to walk toward the dining room, I noticed a small, ugly flower sitting on the table. A cheap, $5 plastic rose. That was it. For all my sacrifices, all my years of love, my husband couldn't even be bothered to give me something real. Something meaningful. And that plastic rose? It was the symbol of everything I had become in their eyes. An afterthought. I don't know what hurt more, the rose or the fact that I was standing there, utterly invisible in my own home. That night, I sat in the quiet of my living room, clutching the rose in my hand. It was hard to breathe. Every part of me ached, not just physically, but emotionally. I had given so much of myself, and yet here I was, nothing more than a passing gesture. I felt betrayed by Michael, by Amanda, by the years of effort I had put into this family. I thought about my husband, Thomas. We'd been married for over 35 years. We had raised Michael together, built a life together. But over the last few years, I noticed a shift in Thomas too. He had become distant, colder. He spent more time away from home, often coming back late at night. At first, I thought it was work, but now I was starting to see the truth. Thomas had been seeing someone else. And I had been blind to it, too focused on keeping everything in place, on holding the family together. But the truth was undeniable now. He had given his mistress a luxury car, a lavish gift, while I received a $5 plastic flower. That was the breaking point. As I sat in the silence of the house, the weight of everything hit me. I had been so busy giving, so busy trying to make everything work, that I had forgotten one important thing. I needed to start thinking about myself. For too long, I had allowed myself to be taken for granted. I had allowed my family to manipulate me, to treat me like I was invisible. But no more. The next day, I called my closest friend, Margaret. She had been my confidant for years, and she had always been there when I needed someone to talk to. Margaret listened patiently as I poured my heart out. "You've got to protect yourself, Eleanor," she said. "This isn't love. This is manipulation. You've given everything for them, and they've taken it all for granted. You don't deserve this. You deserve better. You need to take action." Margaret's words were a wake-up call. She was right. I had spent my whole life sacrificing for others, but I had never taken the time to protect myself. It was time for a change. I began consulting lawyers, getting my financial documents in order, and hiring a private investigator to look into Thomas's affairs. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready. I had lived through enough pain, and I wasn't going to let it define me any longer. It wasn't just about the car, or the plastic rose. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my strength. It was about taking control of my future. I won't lie, there were moments when I doubted myself, when the weight of everything felt unbearable. But Margaret's words kept echoing in my mind. "You deserve better." And I believed it. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I will never again let anyone make me feel small. I am Eleanor, and I will stand tall, no matter what. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of paperwork and legal jargon, trying to find a way out of the suffocating grip of my family's manipulation. I thought I knew my husband, Thomas, but as I sifted through old documents and looked at the bank statements, I saw a side of him I had never imagined. I felt like I was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. The investigator I had hired came back with disturbing findings. Thomas had been spending large sums of money that was meant for our joint savings, on lavish gifts for someone else. My heart sank further as I learned about the trips he had taken, the hotel rooms, the secret dinners. I couldn't escape the image of him standing in front of me, acting like nothing was wrong, while he was betraying me with every breath. I had given him everything. My youth, my love, my trust. And in return, he had given me nothing but empty promises. The pain was sharp, but there was no time to wallow in it. I had made the decision to take control, and I wasn't about to let these betrayals break me. I remember the first time I confronted Thomas about what I had found. I had been stewing in silence, gathering the evidence, preparing myself for the storm that was coming. I was sitting in our living room, that very same room where we had shared so many memories, when I heard his car pull up. I was standing by the window, watching the late afternoon sunlight filter through the blinds. The house, once a warm refuge, now felt cold, empty, and distant. When he walked through the door, I didn't even greet him. I just turned and looked at him, my eyes narrowing with a mix of pain and anger. "Eleanor," he said, his voice sounding unfamiliar, almost hesitant. "Sit down, Thomas," I said, my voice firm. The words came out like a command, but my heart was beating so fast that I thought it would escape my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had dreaded and prepared for. "We need to talk." He sat, his posture stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. He knew. I could see the guilt in his eyes, even though he tried to hide it. "I've seen the receipts, Thomas," I began. "I know about the car you bought her. The trips. The gifts. The money. I know everything." His face paled, and for a moment, he didn't speak. I could almost hear the excuses forming in his mind, but I wasn't interested in hearing them. "Not anymore. This has to stop," I said. "I gave you everything. I gave you my trust, my loyalty, my love. And this is how you repay me?" His lips parted as if to say something, but the words never came. Instead, he hung his head, defeated, and looked away. That was the moment I realized that he wasn't even fighting for me anymore. He wasn't trying to make it right. He was just done. The silence between us felt suffocating. I wanted to shout, to cry, but I didn't. I had already shed my tears. Now, all I had left was the strength to stand tall. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady. "You and I, Thomas. We're done." He didn't try to stop me. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He just sat there, silent, as I walked out of the room. It was over. But what happened next was something I never expected. As I walked down the hallway to the kitchen, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Amanda, my daughter-in-law. Her grip was tight, almost frantic, and I knew something was wrong. "Amanda, what is it?" I asked, my voice a little too sharp. She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at me, her eyes flicking nervously to the side. "I don't want to do this, Eleanor," she finally said, her voice trembling. "But I need you to know something." My heart skipped a beat. I had always tried to be kind to Amanda, even when she treated me with indifference. But something in her tone told me that whatever she was about to say was going to change everything. "Michael," she began, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. "He's not who you think he is." I frowned, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" I don't know how to say this, but—" her voice faltered, and she took a deep breath. "He's been hiding things from you. Big things. Financial things." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean, Amanda?" She looked over her shoulder, as if she were afraid someone might be listening, then lowered her voice to a whisper. "I've been looking at the books, Eleanor. Michael's been siphoning off money from your account. And he's been using it to cover up what Thomas has been doing with that woman. They've been working together to get you out of the picture. They've been making plans to sell the house." My blood ran cold as the words sank in. It was worse than I had imagined. My son, my own flesh and blood, was involved in this betrayal. He was working with Thomas, planning to take everything from me. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning. The idea that Michael, the boy I had raised, could be so cold, so manipulative, it was too much to process. "Why are you telling me this, Amanda?" I asked, my voice trembling now. She looked down, her face flushed with shame. "Because I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I can't live with the guilt. I've been afraid of what might happen if I spoke up, but I can't stand by and watch you lose everything." I stared at her for a long time, trying to process everything. It was hard to believe, but at the same time it made so much sense. The silence. The secrecy. The constant feeling that something wasn't right. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for telling me. I'm going to take care of this." Amanda nodded, but before she could say anything else, I turned and walked out of the house. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I was going to fight back. I wasn't going to let my own son and husband take everything I had worked for. I was going to protect myself. The drive was long, and my mind felt like a whirlwind. I could hardly believe what Amanda had just told me. How had I missed it? My own son, Michael, working with Thomas to take everything I had? It was a betrayal of a magnitude I could hardly wrap my head around. But as the minutes ticked by and the miles rolled under the tires, the reality of it sank deeper into my bones. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was calculated. This was a plan. I found myself in front of a coffee shop in a part of town I hadn't visited in years. The familiar street seemed strange to me now, the places that once felt like home feeling suddenly distant. But I needed to clear my mind, so I stepped out of the car, walking slowly as the weight of the situation pressed on my shoulders. It wasn't long before I found a quiet corner in the cafe. I ordered a simple coffee and sat by the window, the warm sunlight streaming in and contrasting with the cold that had settled in my heart. I didn't know what to do next. But then, I remembered Margaret. My trusted friend. She had always been my rock. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. She picked up after the second ring. "Eleanor." Margaret's voice was a calm and soothing balm against the chaos in my mind. "What's going on, my dear?" I let out a shaky breath, my fingers tapping the rim of my coffee cup. Margaret, it's worse than I thought. Thomas, he's been hiding everything from me. And Michael. Michael's been helping him. They've been stealing from me. They've been planning to sell the house behind my back. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then Margaret spoke softly. You're not the first woman to be betrayed by those she loves. But you are one of the strongest I know, Eleanor. You don't have to take this lying down. I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice breaking. I don't know who to trust anymore. I've been with Thomas for 35 years. And Michael, my own son. I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The pain was unbearable. Margaret's words cut through the fog of my mind. Eleanor, you've been living for them, but you've forgotten how to live for yourself. It's time you take back what's yours. Her words were like a jolt to my system. I had spent so much of my life thinking of everyone else, thinking that love and sacrifice were the highest values. But I was more than just a mother, more than just a wife. I was Eleanor, and I deserved respect. I deserved to be seen. I'm going to fight back, I said, more to myself than to Margaret. I'll get a lawyer. I'll get everything in order. I won't let them take everything from me. It's time I start living for me. Good, Margaret said, her voice firm and proud. And I'll be here every step of the way. You're not alone in this, Eleanor. You've never been alone. I ended the call with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Margaret was right. I wasn't alone. I didn't need to hide in the shadows of my family's mistakes anymore. I was ready to take the reins of my life back, to reclaim the control I had lost. The next few days were a blur of meetings with lawyers, financial advisors, and even private investigators. I had spent so many years being the caretaker, being the one who fixed everything, that I didn't know where to start when it came to protecting myself. But with every step, I grew more confident. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal of trust. I was fighting for my future. I learned things about Thomas and Michael that made my blood run cold. The house I had spent so many years in, the home that had witnessed the birth of my family, was at risk. It wasn't just that they were plotting to sell it. It was the lies they had been telling me about their finances. The money I had worked so hard to save for retirement, the inheritance I had planned to leave for my grandchildren, they were trying to take it all from me. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on. I was no longer the woman who would simply accept it. I had spent too many years being overlooked, being treated like I didn't matter. That stopped now. I remember the day I went to the bank to meet with my financial advisor. I walked in with my head held high, my shoulders straight, and the strength of all the women who had come before me flowing through my veins. I wasn't just there to discuss the accounts. I was there to make sure I had control. I was going to protect what was mine. The advisor greeted me with a smile, but as he began to go over the details, I could see the worry in his eyes. He knew what was at stake. He knew that the assets I had worked for were being siphoned off, hidden from me. It was all there in black and white. Eleanor, he said cautiously, you have every right to question these transactions. This doesn't look right. I want to know everything, I said firmly. I want to know where the money went, every penny of it. I'm taking back control of my life, and that includes my finances. He nodded, his expression serious. I'll start the investigation right away. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from being passive, from being the one who kept everything together. It was the kind of peace that came from knowing I had taken the first step in standing up for myself. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Thomas and I had shared countless meals, and I thought about the life I had built. It was filled with love, yes, but also filled with sacrifice. Now that sacrifice was being tested. But I wasn't going to let it be for nothing. I looked at the photo on the wall, a picture of Michael and me when he was a little boy, a time when I believed I could fix anything. I couldn't fix this. But I could fight for what was mine, and I would. No one would take away my dignity, my home, or my peace. I was done being the invisible woman in my own story. It was time for me to be the hero of my own life. It's funny how, in the midst of all the chaos, there are still moments when clarity strikes. I remember that evening well, after meeting with a financial advisor. I'd spent so many years working for everyone else, making sure everyone else was happy and comfortable. But now, with the truth unfolding before me like a storm, I realized it was my turn. My turn to live, my turn to take charge. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the family photo above the fireplace. Michael, all grown up, stood beside me in that picture, looking up at me with his big, bright eyes. It was hard to reconcile that image with the man he had become. My son, who I had loved and nurtured for all these years, was now complicit in a scheme to rob me of everything. He wasn't the boy I had raised. But perhaps the biggest betrayal wasn't the money, or the house, or the gifts. It was the betrayal of trust. It was the feeling that, after all these years, I wasn't even a person to them anymore. I was just a pawn in a game I didn't even know existed. I needed to see them both, Thomas and Michael, face to face. I needed to confront them with everything I had uncovered. I didn't know how it would go, but I knew I couldn't go on like this. I had already spent too many nights sleepless, too many days feeling invisible, feeling less than. The time had come to stop being the victim. The next day, I called them both. I told Thomas the first needed to speak to him, and I made sure to tell Michael that I was meeting with him too. I had no idea how they would react, but I had come to a point where I no longer cared. This was about me now. We met at the house, the place that had once felt like home, but now it felt like a battleground. I stood in the living room, looking at the walls that had witnessed years of family dinners, birthdays, and celebrations. It seemed almost surreal that I was standing here now, preparing to take back control of my life, my legacy. Thomas was the first to walk in. He looked at me, his eyes cold, his expression defensive. "What is this, Eleanor?" he asked, his voice clipped. "You've been making all sorts of waves lately. What do you want?" I stood up straight, facing him. "I want the truth, Thomas. I want to know why you've betrayed me. I want to know why you've been hiding things from me." He opened his mouth to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. "No," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You don't get to lie your way out of this. I know everything, about the money, about the house, about your mistress. I know everything, and I'm not going to sit back and let you destroy everything I've worked for." He stood there, looking at me for a moment, his jaw tight, his face flushed with anger. But there was something else behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe? Or fear? I couldn't be sure. But whatever it was, I could tell he wasn't expecting this. "You don't understand," Thomas said quietly, almost pleading. "It's not what you think. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just trying to find something, Eleanor. Something I lost long ago." "Lost?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You didn't lose anything, Thomas. You threw it away. You threw me away. You threw our family away." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I'm done being your doormat. I'm done being invisible in this family. You and Michael, you've both taken advantage of me for too long. And it ends now." Before he could respond, Michael walked in, looking sheepish, like a child caught doing something wrong. "Mom," he said, his voice tentative. "What's going on?" I turned to him, my heart heavy with disappointment. "Michael, do you even realize what you've done? Do you even see what you've been a part of?" Michael's face flushed. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to get like this. I didn't think. I interrupted. "That's the problem, Michael. You never thought. You never cared. You've been playing your own game, and you dragged your father and me into it. And for what? So you could have more money? More things?" He took a step back, looking like he was about to argue, but I wasn't about to let him. "You used me, Michael," I continued, my voice breaking as the weight of everything came crashing down. "You used me for my money, for my time, for my love. And you never once thought about the consequences. You never once thought about me." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I wiped them away, refusing to let them fall. I was stronger than that. I had to be. "Mom, please," Michael said softly, stepping forward as if to comfort me. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you." I shook my head. No, Michael. You didn't want to fix it. You didn't care enough to even try. And that's the hardest part. You could have come to me. We could have talked about it. But you chose this. And now you're going to have to live with the consequences. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, his hand running through his hair. Eleanor, please, he said, his voice strained. I know I've made mistakes. But this isn't the end, is it? No, Thomas, I said, standing tall, my back straight. It's not the end. It's just the beginning. They looked at me in stunned silence, and for a moment, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to speak my truth. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of their judgment, their manipulation, their control. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them behind. I had said what I needed to say. Now, it was time to take the next step. I spent that night alone, for the first time in what felt like forever. The house was eerily quiet, and the silence rang in my ears, filling the space that had once been so full of life. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me, but beneath it all, there was a strange sense of peace. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, for the first time in years. But standing up for myself wasn't enough. It wasn't just about calling out the betrayal. It was about taking action. The next few days felt like a blur of phone calls, meetings, and paperwork. I had set the wheels in motion for the future I was building for myself, one where I didn't have to depend on anyone else. Where I could finally be free. The first step was meeting with my lawyer, a sharp woman named Claudia who had been handling legal matters for years. She was practical, no nonsense, and exactly what I needed. When I walked into her office, I could feel the strength radiating from her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't facing this fight alone. Eleanor, I've gone through everything, Claudia said, glancing at the papers spread out in front of her. And you have a solid case. You're entitled to everything that's yours, your property, your savings, everything. I nodded, though my heart was heavy with the knowledge that this wasn't just about money. This was about something far deeper. My self-worth. The years of sacrifice had left me drained, but now that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, it felt worth it. We'll get the house back for you, Claudia continued. And we'll ensure that Thomas and Michael don't have access to any of your finances. I've already contacted a few investigators to look into any other assets they may have hidden from you. I felt a small wave of relief, but it was quickly replaced with a sense of urgency. I had to make sure I was prepared for what was coming next. The thought of fighting my own son, someone I had raised with love and devotion, felt like a knife to my chest. But I wasn't going to let my own family destroy me. Not after everything I had been through. I had spent so many years protecting others that I had forgotten how to protect myself. Now I was learning. After meeting with Claudia, I decided to go to a place that always made me feel grounded, the garden out back. It was where I had spent countless hours planting flowers, pruning bushes, and watching the seasons change. It was a place where I had once felt connected to something larger than myself. But today, as I stood there, the flowers seemed different. They were still beautiful, of course, but they didn't carry the same meaning they once had. They were just plants, beautiful, delicate, and fleeting. Just like my old life. The realization hit me hard. Nothing lasted forever. Not love, not family, not even time. It was up to me to make sure that I wasn't just an afterthought in my own life. I thought back to the day Thomas had given his mistress that car. How, at that moment, I had felt like I was being erased. But I wasn't erased. I wasn't going to let myself be forgotten. I was Eleanor, and I was going to rebuild. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. There were still days when I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. But I had made the decision to no longer let the weight of my past control me. I was going to take back what I had lost, piece by piece. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had shared so many meals with my family. I had just finished dinner. Something simple, something just for me. I felt a sense of pride in doing something so ordinary by myself. I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I picked up the phone and called Margaret. Her voice, always so calming, greeted me. "Eleanor," she said, her tone full of warmth. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I replied, the words feeling stronger than I thought they would. I'm finally starting to breathe again. I'm finally starting to take control of my life. I'm rebuilding, Margaret. And it feels good. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then Margaret laughed, a deep, knowing laugh. I'm proud of you, Eleanor. I always have been. I smiled, a genuine smile, the kind I hadn't given in years. Thank you, Margaret. I couldn't have done this without you. You've always had it in you, she said, her voice full of affection. Now it's time for you to show the world what you're capable of. That night, as I sat alone in the house, I felt something shift within me. It wasn't just the house or the money, or the fight that was coming. It was something deeper. I was starting to understand my own worth. I had spent so many years thinking that my value came from what I gave to others, but now I saw that my value came from within. I was enough just as I was. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk in the garden, the sunlight gently filtering through the trees. As I walked, I thought about what I wanted for my future. It wasn't just about revenge or fighting back. It was about peace. I wanted a life filled with calm, with joy, and with the freedom to be who I truly was, without fear of being overshadowed or overlooked. I stood in front of the house, looking up at the windows that had once felt like a cage. I was going to keep fighting, but it wasn't just for the house or the money. It was for me. It was for the woman I had become, the woman who had the strength to rise above her past and create something new. And when the day came for me to confront Thomas and Michael again, I would do it not as the victim, but as a woman who had taken back control of her own life. The days that followed my decision to reclaim my life felt like a slow awakening. I had spent so many years in the shadows, both of my own making and of my family's neglect, that stepping into the light, really standing up for myself, was an experience both terrifying and exhilarating. But it was the only path forward. I was no longer the woman who would quietly accept betrayal. I was learning how to become the woman I was meant to be. There were moments when the weight of everything would settle back on my shoulders, moments when I would sit alone in my quiet house, and the loneliness would threaten to swallow me whole. But then I would remind myself that this wasn't a defeat. This was my chance to rewrite my story, to step into my own power. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my tea as the early sunlight streamed through the window. The house was still and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once consumed it. I had made the decision to take action, to confront Thomas and Michael once more. This time, I would not be passive. This time, I would have the truth in my hands, and I would not back down. I had hired an investigator to follow up on the findings Claudia had given me. The more I dug into the financial records, the more I uncovered. There were hidden accounts, secret transfers of money, even shady investments that had been made in my name, without my consent or knowledge. It made my stomach churn, but I knew that every bit of evidence would be crucial. When the day arrived for the confrontation, I felt surprisingly calm. I had spent hours preparing for this moment, mentally rehearsing what I would say, how I would say it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was clear-headed, focused on one thing only: reclaiming my dignity. I called them both. Michael was the first to arrive. He stood in the doorway, looking uncertain, but this time there was no softness in my heart. The hurt I had once felt had been replaced by a steely resolve. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice still tinged with the uncertainty of the past few weeks. But I wasn't interested in his uncertainty. I had been uncertain for far too long. It was time to take control. "Michael, sit down," I said firmly, my voice steady. There was no room for negotiation, no room for excuses anymore. He sat, looking nervous but not speaking. I placed the folder in front of him. The same folder that contained all the evidence, the bank transfers, the hidden accounts, the secret investments, all of it laid bare. "I know what you've been doing," I said quietly, my eyes locked on his. "I know what you and your father have been planning. And I won't stand for it. You've betrayed me, Michael. You've treated me like I don't matter. And I'm not going to let you get away with it." His face paled as he looked at the documents, his hand hovering over them, but not picking them up. "Mom, I didn't," I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know. Stop. I cut him off, my voice strong, unwavering. You knew. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose this. And now, there's no going back. I could see the guilt, the shame in his eyes. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't here to soothe his conscience. I wasn't here to make him feel better. I was here to take back what was mine. I've spoken with a lawyer, I continued, my voice steady but full of conviction. I've made sure that everything is being investigated. You won't get away with this. Neither of you will. Michael's head dropped, and I could see the weight of what he had done finally sinking in. He had never expected me to fight back. He had always expected me to be passive, to let it all slide. But not anymore. Not this time. The door opened, and Thomas walked in. He looked at the two of us, his eyes flicking from Michael to me, his expression unreadable. He must have known what was happening. "Eleanor, what is this?" Thomas asked, his voice cold, his face guarded. "This is the truth, Thomas," I said, standing up now, my voice rising with each word. "The truth that you've been hiding from me for years. The truth that you've been lying to me about, that you've been stealing from me. And it's over." He stood there for a moment, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find the right words. But no words could undo what he had done. No words could take away the years of manipulation, the years of deceit. "Eleanor." His voice was weak now, defeated. But I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I wasn't going to fall for it. "I'm done, Thomas," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Done with the lies. Done with the betrayal. And done with you." There was a long pause, and I could see the realization hit him. He had lost control. He had lost everything. "You've destroyed everything we built together," I said, my heart steady despite the years of hurt. "But I won't let you destroy me." Thomas didn't say another word. He just turned and walked out of the room, leaving me and Michael standing in the wake of everything that had been destroyed. I could hear Michael's voice trembling as he spoke. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to fix this." I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt no sadness. No pity. I just saw him for who he was. A man who had chosen his path, who had made his decisions. And now, it was time for me to choose mine. "There's nothing to fix, Michael," I said softly. "What's broken can't be fixed. But you have to live with what you've done. And so do I." He didn't argue. He didn't try to defend himself. He just sat there, his face a mix of regret and disbelief. But there was nothing left for me to say. I walked out of the room, leaving the past behind. The road ahead was uncertain, but I no longer feared it. I had taken back my power. I had reclaimed my life. The days after the confrontation were some of the most peaceful and unsettling days of my life. The storm had passed, and I was left standing in the aftermath, unsure of what the future held, but more confident than I had ever been in my own strength. There were no more secrets, no more lies. The truth had been laid bare, and now it was my turn to rebuild, on my terms. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long had lifted, and with it came a strange sense of clarity. I had always believed that peace would come when the chaos of betrayal was resolved, when the hurt was acknowledged. But what I realized during those quiet nights was that peace doesn't come from resolution. It comes from letting go. I had spent so many years holding on to the past, clinging to the idea of family, of love, of duty. But now, I understood something I hadn't before. Love does not have to be a one-sided sacrifice. Family does not always deserve your loyalty if they are unwilling to offer theirs in return. And sometimes, the most powerful act of love you can offer is to let go. The house, once a battleground, now felt like a sanctuary. I had spent the last few years caring for it, maintaining it, ensuring everything was perfect. But now, I looked at it differently. It was just a house, a structure that had been a home but no longer felt like mine. The house, like the life I had lived, was now just a memory. I made the decision to sell it. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. But after everything that had happened, it felt like the only way to truly move on. The house represented the past, the years of devotion I had given, only to be betrayed by the very people I had trusted the most. Selling it meant I was no longer tied to the past. It meant I was free to move forward and build something new. Something just for me. I remember the day the "for sale" sign went up. It was a strange feeling, seeing it there in front of the house. A symbol of finality. A reminder that I was no longer the woman who had tried to hold it all together. I was the woman who had let go. And in letting go I had found freedom. As the days passed, I focused on the little things. The small moments of peace that had eluded me for so long. I spent more time with Margaret, who had been a steadfast friend through it all. We went for walks in the park, had coffee at our favorite cafe, and spent hours reminiscing about the old days. I didn't have to explain myself to her. She understood. She knew the weight I had carried, and now, she was there to help me carry my joy. But there were still difficult moments. Moments when I would hear a car pull up and expect it to be Thomas, or when I would see Michael's name flash on my phone. There were moments when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But each time, I reminded myself that I had made the best decision I could with the knowledge I had. I had done what was necessary for my peace of mind. And that was enough. I hired movers to help me pack up the house, and the day I left felt like the first step into a new life. I found a small apartment in the city. Nothing extravagant, but just enough to give me a sense of space and independence. It wasn't about luxury. It was about freedom. It was about starting fresh, without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. I remember the first night I spent in the apartment. It was simple. Just me, my things, and a quiet sense of contentment. No drama. No lies. No manipulation. Just peace. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee in the small kitchen, I looked out the window and saw a world full of possibility. I had thought that peace would come only when everything was fixed, when all the wrongs had been righted. But what I had learned was that peace isn't a destination. It's a state of mind. It was then that I realized something important. It wasn't the betrayal that had broken me. It was my own belief that I had to be everything for everyone else. I had spent so much of my life trying to please others, trying to make everyone happy, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. But now I was learning how to do just that. I was learning how to be enough for myself. I still thought about Michael and Thomas, of course. I would always love them, but I had learned that love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be mistreated. Sometimes, love means walking away and choosing yourself. And that's exactly what I had done. The weeks passed, and I became more comfortable in my new life. I joined a book club, took up painting again, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. I didn't need anyone else to define my happiness. I was creating my own happiness on my own terms. One afternoon, as I was walking home from the shelter, I received a message from Michael. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. The message was short and simple. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have never treated you like I did. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart heavy with emotions I couldn't quite name. He was trying, I could see that. But I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. I responded, but it wasn't a message of forgiveness. It was a message of strength. "I'm doing better, Michael. I'm finally learning to put myself first. I hope one day you'll understand why I had to do what I did." I didn't hear from him again for a while, and maybe that was for the best. I didn't need closure from him or from Thomas. The closure I needed was the kind that came from within. I had healed myself, piece by piece. I had learned to stand tall, to protect my heart, and to live for myself. The future was uncertain, but it didn't scare me anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. It's been several months since I made the decision to walk away, and every day feels like a step further from the woman I once was. The woman who had given everything, only to be left with the remnants of betrayal. Now I am someone new. Someone stronger, someone more certain of who I am, and someone finally learning how to live for herself. As I sit here in my small apartment, the sun beginning to set on another quiet evening, I find myself thinking about all that has changed. I used to believe that I was defined by my family, by my role as a mother, a wife, and a grandmother. But now, I realize that I am defined by my own strength, my own choices, and my own ability to rise above the things that once held me down. I remember the first time I felt truly at peace. It was a rainy day, and I was sitting in the living room, surrounded by books and the smell of freshly brewed tea. It was the first time I'd been alone without feeling lonely. The weight that had been on my shoulders for so many years, the weight of guilt, of resentment, of sacrifice, had finally been lifted. I could breathe without that heaviness. I no longer look at the world through the lens of loss. I look at it through the lens of possibility. I may not have the family I once dreamed of, but I have something far more valuable. My independence, my peace, and the freedom to choose who I let into my life. One evening, Margaret and I sat in the park, talking about everything that had transpired. The sun had just dipped behind the horizon, leaving the sky a deep, soft blue, and there was a calm in the air that mirrored my own heart. Margaret, ever the voice of wisdom, looked at me and said something I will never forget. "Eleanor, you've come so far. And you're still standing, stronger than ever. The woman you are now, she's the one you've always been. You just didn't know it." I smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through me. Margaret had always been there for me, but her words felt different now. She wasn't just offering support, she was acknowledging the journey I had made. And she was right. The woman I had become was always inside me, waiting to break free. That night, I decided to take another step. I enrolled in a writing class at the local community center. I had always loved writing, but for years, I had told myself that it was a dream I didn't have time for. That it wasn't practical. But now I had time. And now, I had the courage to pursue something just for me. I wasn't writing for anyone else. I was writing for myself, for my own healing, for my own voice. The first class was intimidating, but I found comfort in the words that flowed from my pen. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was simply expressing myself, telling my story in a way that felt true to who I was now. It was cathartic, liberating even. Every word was a release, every sentence a step toward reclaiming a part of myself that I had buried for too long. Weeks passed, and my writing blossomed. I began to share my work with the group, and though I still felt a bit of vulnerability, I no longer feared judgment. Writing wasn't just a hobby, it was my way of taking back control, of asserting my own identity in a world that had once tried to silence me. Through it all, I remained at peace with my decisions. There were no more late-night worries, no more thoughts about what could have been. I had let go of the things I couldn't change, the people who had hurt me, and the regrets that had weighed so heavily on my heart. The act of letting go wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my growth. And now, I could breathe without fear of suffocating under the weight of the past. One day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Michael. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. The letter was short, but it was enough. He apologized, sincerely it seemed, and expressed regret for the choices he had made. He said that he understood why I had to walk away, and that he respected my decision, even if it was hard to accept. He asked if we could meet. I sat there for a long time, reading the letter over and over again. Part of me wanted to meet with him, to try and find some closure. But another part of me, the part that had learned to protect herself, knew that I didn't need his approval to move forward. I had already moved forward. I wrote back, telling him that I appreciated his apology, but that I had already made peace with everything. I wished him well, but I had to continue living my life the way I had learned to. On my own terms, with no expectations from anyone else. It was a quiet moment of realization. I didn't need my family's approval. I didn't need their validation. I had created my own sense of worth, and it wasn't tied to anything they could offer me. As I watched the sun set on another day, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The past no longer haunted me. The betrayal no longer defined me. I was free to live the life I had always deserved. A life filled with peace, joy, and the freedom to choose my own path. I may have lost a family, but I gained something far more precious. Myself.